Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pastoral Thoughts Podcast. This is your host, Jack Young, and in studio today we got Missionary Nathan Shaver, and he did the preaching for us this morning. We had a great day in the Lord's house. We're very thankful for it, and he was preaching today. We had Crown College tour group with us today singing, and so the Lord's Day, at least the work part of it, is over, and now we get to do a podcast. So thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Pastor. It's exciting. We had a good day today and enjoyed the opportunity.
Yeah, one of the things I was saying with the folks today, it's such an honor and a blessing just to be around the ministry for decades. And so when I first saw Nathan, I didn't give him the time of day when I first saw him. He was 7 years old. Now he's about 15. So, what does a 15-year-old have to do with a 7-year-old? But it was in our church in Oklahoma City. And so his dad came there as a layman and had a job, I think was a contract through Oklahoma University, right?
I'm not sure.
I know we worked when he got me his job there, but he was teaching air traffic control. And it was through some sort of program had to do with OU right there at the FAA facilities in Oklahoma City. And his dad came in, and his dad was on fire for the Lord, got right in the choir and became a deacon, song leader, all this in our church down in Oklahoma City, the Winter Hills Baptist Church. And so it's just neat. It's been, how old are you now?
34.
Okay. So it's almost 30 years later.
Yeah. 95, we moved there, so.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
Yeah, and so it's great to see people just serving the Lord, continuing on the faith, and then just see children. We're both second-generation Christians.
Amen.
Just taking up the mantle and serving our generation, and with God willing, we have decades in front of us if we live a natural life.
Amen.
So it's an exciting place to be.
It is. It's exciting to. I'm grateful for my dad and his testimony and his impact on my life. We have a great relationship, and I'm grateful to serve the Lord with him.
When you when you were 7 years old, you moved to Oklahoma City, and then how old were you when your dad moved to Hopkinsville to start the Greater Cumberland Baptist Church?
I was 13, so new teenager, and I remember that being a big deal because I just got into youth group, and I was excited about that.
Yeah,
and then
you were part of a big youth group,
and then you're in a church plant, and you're kind of the only teenager, and but we really enjoyed it. I never remember harboring any sort of bitterness or it was exciting. Yeah, and I was grateful.
And so, one thing about when you go to start a church plant, you put all your kids to work. You're like a farmer, subsistence living, man. You get out there in the fields and plow, boy,
knocking on doors, and
so it was like the family church plant, and it was something that you got to serve the Lord together in.
Yeah, we loved it, and I was the youngest. I'm the youngest of four, but we're all within, I think, 5 years. Mm-hmm. So 4 teenagers, and we were out knocking on doors, and you're cleaning the church every week, and for the first while, the family's everything. Mm-hmm. You're taking up the offering, and my mom worked in the nursery every week, and so it's just every single aspect of the ministry.
How old were you when you taught your first Sunday school class?
Oh, I don't even remember. I'm very early on teaching kids, probably 14, I guess, or almost as soon as we started.
And again, you're doing that together as a family. And I heard somebody making a brilliant statement last week. It was amazing. And it's the principles in the Bible. I always say the closest bond is in the yoke, serving the Lord together. Amen. You're close to Christ. You're close to each other. But it was a secular person that was saying this. They said that the relationships that last and are built are not built on consumerism, meaning you're doing a ball game or a TV show or even golfing together or pleasure seeking. It's built on people, instead of consuming, is that they're giving. And when you're building something together,
putting the work
really you probably united your family in such a very special way.
We were very close, and that's not going to happen with parents who are two-faced, or we've always been close family, and we were close then, and putting in the work, and the heartbreak, and you see a lot of things about the ministry as a pastor's kid, but then also in a church plant, just all of the little things that happen. And it was galvanizing.
And if you would have grown up in the youth group in the big church, I grew up in that same youth group in that same church, and there's probably 100 teenagers at least consistently in that youth group. You would have been separated from your parents in service, really, because, in that church, they had an own teen section where you sat away from your parents over on the side, and then it was a very, you're very involved in school and sports, and then your youth group, and they had like youth soul winning, youth visitation.
Yes.
So even if you showed up for church visitation, you're separated into your own group away from your parents. Where I think what's special about your teen years is that you, with your parents, got to build something together.
Yeah, and we were we were together all the time.
Yeah,
and I remember those days and those conversations about sitting with people, and we got such a unique opportunity to be a part of something.
And so really you were in the ministry.
Yeah,
it was like Paul and Barnabas.
Yeah, right.
It was like,
yes.
all hands on deck.
Yeah.
Hey, you're 14, but I need you to teach this Sunday school class. We don't have anybody else.
It was the reality of the ministry, because the ministry is not the glamorous. I don't even know if you could even describe it as glamorous, but it was just the work. You're putting in the work, and you're going over to the elderly's houses, and you're mowing their lawns, and you're moving people in. And we were on a military church, so we always had people moving in and moving out, and so it's just every single aspect of if you want to call it the grind of just getting your hands dirty and doing the work, and
you're just working, being a shepherd. Really, you're being taking care of the sheep on a continual basis. It's just practical church work. I was talking to your dad a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about somebody taking a church in their 20s. I said, not many men can do that. And your dad said, the few who can usually grew up in a pastor's home. So they had to grow up doing the ministry. Yeah. And so you're one of those guys. You saw way more. You were essentially an assistant pastor.
Right. Yeah.
You didn't have a position, but you were.
Lord. Yeah.
I can hear your dad saying, Nate, hey, listen, I need you. He would emphasize, I need you to, he says that a lot, doesn't he? Yes. I need you to, go over to this person's house and help them with that. So that training is invaluable.
Amen. I really am grateful. And it was invaluable. And when I had so many opportunities to do so many different things in all the different aspects of, and looking back, I think when you're in the middle of it, you don't realize, but as you start serving in ministry on a full-time basis, you start seeing all those things. You're like, oh, I've done that, or I've seen what this looks like. And
you know how to scramble, you know how to hustle if you need to get workers or this or that, and move things around. You've seen it done before. Yeah, and it's not intimidating. Yeah, what a blessing. And now, how old were you when you pastored that church there? I can't remember the town that you were in.
Cadiz, Kentucky. And I was 20. I was 28, and that was an eye-opening experience, because it kind of goes hand in hand with what I did growing up and working in the church. But then it's just an eye-opening experience of all the things you just don't know.
Yeah,
and a lot of it had to do with, not the work necessarily, because I was comfortable with that, but it was the teaching.
Yeah,
and so 28. I might have been 27, 28, right?
Yeah, so it was a big shock to the system, huh?
It was a huge shock to the system.
Yeah.
And you really just are like, I don't know anything. And I got to.
Well, and there's a big difference between being the number one guy and the number two guy, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was probably less than number two and more than number three, but it's just on you. You make the decision, and you got to figure things out, and you've got to ask the people, and you've got to be humble, and you've got people coming to you with tough questions, and hey, what does this verse mean, or where do you stand on this? And you can't just say, hey, well, this is what we've always done, or well, let's talk to pastor about it, or you're the guy, you're the answer. And
because if you're number two, you can say, that's so good, let's talk to pastor.
That's right. Yeah, I'll set up I'll even put you in the calendar so you can talk to pastor. So I'm sure he's got a great answer for that.
Yeah, that'd be funny. You just you just have to have like a empty room in that church and just put the name pastor on it, and just pretend like
That's it. That's
let
great.
me ask Pastor.
Yeah, that's right.
Pastor likes it if we do it this way.
Who
Pastor
can I
does not want to
offload the responsibility
there you
to,
go.
and he usually has a week waiting period. So you have to, it takes a
Right.
week to
Right.
give the answer to the
Let me
question.
get to him,
So,
and he'll get back to you
yeah,
through
that's right.
me.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
that's something. And so anyway, let's talk about Iceland. You're headed to Iceland as a missionary.
Amen. We're headed to Iceland. We're on deputation, and we'd love to get there early 2023, and start working.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah.
How'd you end up on Iceland? How did you know you're supposed to go there?
There was not a specific moment, but when I was young, I met a missionary, and the Lord used that. He planted the seed from a very early age, and so from that time, I always had this. I don't know if I'd describe it as a fascination, but Iceland was always on my mind. And when I thought of missions, I always wanted to be a missionary, and our family played a big role in that. We'd always have missionaries in our home. But when I thought of missions, it was Iceland. It was always Iceland. But that wasn't. I don't know if that was from the Lord as far as specific direction. But I was pastoring, so fast forward to 20 years, and when I was pastoring, the Lord started directing us on, and it's hard to clearly define if there was an exact moment, but we felt the Lord leading us on, and it wasn't anything external as much as it was internal, and so we started praying about it, and I went to my dad and a couple other men about praying, and I was pastoring at this time, so it was just a gradual understanding of knowing the Lord's will, and through prayer. And I prayed for a couple things. I said, God, if this is not your will, then take this desire to go to Iceland. It was a real desire. It's not like I was fighting with the Lord over this. Take this desire away, and if it is your will, then open the doors and direct us down the path that you have us to go. And he opened all those doors, and he started kicking us through the doors. Wow. And it was just obvious, and so many different things, that this was what the Lord had for us. So it was less a specific moment, but for me, missions personally was always going to be focused on Iceland. And I didn't know if that was ever going to be the case. Yeah. There were many years I kind of wanted it to be the case, but I didn't know if that's what it would be. And then the Lord just had to get us ready. And
I vaguely recall when we were on a missions trip to Grenada that you as a teenager were talking about going to Iceland.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It was always in my mind.
So I remember that correctly. Yeah. But I remember, like, maybe it was your mom or whoever, maybe it was just talking to you saying that you really feel like you're supposed to go to Iceland as a missionary. And I really do think that God puts different regions into people's hearts and sends them there. They're not. Amen. And then all the things along the way, working for your dad, pastoring, and all these things are, it was God, preparing unconsciously you for Iceland.
Yeah. And you don't see it in the moment, but you see it looking back. And
we had a singing group from Crown this morning, and Clarence Sexton always says there's two types of preparation: unconscious preparation and conscious preparation.
That's good.
Amen. And so, God unconsciously prepares while you have something in your heart and sends you through different circumstances and situations, gives you experience, lets you exercise your faith, get your faith stronger, and then sends you to where you're supposed to go. And then from there.
And now we're in the conscious preparation where it's very obvious, and we're seeing the Lord on it almost on a day-to-day basis. We're saying, oh, look what the Lord's doing in our life. Yeah. And it's not, it's not always us happily going along with the preparation that the Lord has for us. Sometimes it's a little bit of a squeezing and a shaping and molding. And I always imagine it, whittling as a kid, kind of whittling this stick into the shape you want. Yeah. And that whittling's not, for the stick, it's not enjoyable, but that's how I imagine what the Lord is doing in our lives right now. Is he's getting rid of the things that we don't need, and he's shaping us to the shape that we need to be.
He trains us, puts us through trials, improves us, impresses us, and when I'm tried, I'll come forth as gold. And I think that and it's true of anything in the natural world too, because if you're going to be, if you want to be in the Army, I always ask the guys out of basic training. I'd say, was basic harder or easier than you thought? every single one always said easier. No one ever said harder.
That's
so they were
interesting.
really scared about basic training.
Yeah.
But then if you're going to go into some sort of special ops or something like this in the military, there's going to be training. There's going to be trials and tribulation. They're going to put it to you. So if you're going to be special forces, those guys tell me all they go through, and I got to witness
God
with my own
bless them.
2 eyes some of these schools that, in the Army they put you through. So yeah, if you're going to be a Navy SEAL for Jesus, man, you're going to go through Hell Week.
You got to, that's right.
The Lord's going to get you prepared. And so it's an exciting thing to be in the school of faith. So tell us about the country of Iceland. What's it like?
It's cold. I mean, it's not terrible. So relatively speaking, we've been all over America raising support, and so when I'm in the South, I can accentuate how cold it is, because it is cold. It doesn't really ever get warm. The summers there are 40s and 50s degrees, 40 to 50s, but the winters aren't terrible. And so then when I'm in the North, I'm talking about actually it's kind of warm comparatively speaking, but winters you're looking at 20 to 30s, and summers 40s to 50s, and it's such an interesting climate.
That
it's an
is
island.
interesting.
And it stays
So you're saying it doesn't get lower than the 20s or the 30s?
for the most part, yeah, especially in the southern part.
And
you're
then
not
you're talking
gonna see
Fahrenheit, all this stuff.
Yes, yeah,
yeah. And then in the summer, it's 40 to 50 degrees.
They have
Man,
some
I
days
did
where they
not
see the
realize
60s
that.
and a lot of rain and overcast. And I was talking to somebody, and they said this summer they had 4 days with sun, and so that's kind of what.
And there's no trees there.
Not many trees at all.
So when we had a military base, he told us this morning what they tell the guys.
So I had a few military men say when they got over to Iceland, and this was Air Force and Navy for the most part, their commanding officer, he would tell them, hey, there's a woman behind every tree. Don't worry about that. And they would tell them that beforehand. Hey, there's a woman behind every tree. And then you get to Iceland, and you're
there
like,
ain't no trees.
Where are the trees? There's no trees. So.
No trees and no women.
Kept the guys out of trouble.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what size is Iceland? The size of what state?
I always compare it to Kentucky. It's about the size of Kentucky.
Okay.
So going around, and most of your driving is going to be on the outside on the coast.
Yeah.
And it's probably a 15-hour drive to go all the way around the island.
In inland, like nobody really lives there. What's it like, volcanic?
I'm
wasteland?
unaware of anyone living there. Glaciers, you have there's volcanoes everywhere. So you've got volcanoes on the coast, and when you think of volcano, I mean, this is not some huge mountain where there's a open pit you're waiting for lava to erupt out of. But you've got mountains on the interior, but a lot of it is glacial, and the big part of the population density being on the coast has to do more with fishing than it does. I'm sure you could live inland if you wanted to, and there's people who are doing some farming a little more inland.
So fishing is the biggest industry there?
Fishing is the main industry, that and tourism. But historically, it's going to be fishing, and so you've got the population centers on
they
the
grow
coast.
produce on that island?
In greenhouses, about all they can get. Yeah, you're not going to grow. I've heard the growing season's like 20 days, so you're not going to grow much with that. And the lack of sun plays a big part of that.
Okay, so the Vikings, before they got stuff imported back in the day, they just ate fish, and that was it.
I think fish is such a and don't correct me. Okay, I'm sure there's someone who knows.
For all of our listeners here, especially if you're of Icelandic descent, if you want to go back to your ancient diet, eat nothing but fish
and horse,
and they did eat horse too. So fish and horse, they're on a carnivore diet. Yeah, they didn't eat any vegetables.
I don't know what vegetables they would eat. Yeah, maybe root like potatoes.
So what I ate for dinner is a ribeye. That was it. I didn't have anything else.
Amen. Yeah, that's right.
Man, I ate like a Viking.
You don't get that there.
I ate like a Viking.
Except it's beef.
Well, yeah, except there would be horse ribeye.
Right. They do raise sheep there, and they're able to, with greenhouses, grow a lot of the vegetables, but they can't keep up with, it's hard to commercially grow that out. So they import most food. I would say, 90% of the food they eat is going to be imported.
So let me ask you this, though. Back to the meat diet.
Yeah, sure.
So the anthropologists, like the old skeletons and stuff like that, the Vikings... Or is that what they're called on the island? Okay, so the Vikings who lived there and established that, like their skeletal structure, their teeth, their size, their age, weren't they very, very healthy?
Yeah, that's a question I've never been given before. I don't know. They seem to me that would be the case, but I honestly don't know.
Man.
Stop
Again,
me
I don't
there.
think you need vegetables. All you need to eat is like
Yes.
fish and meat.
So I would say
Organ
anecdotally, no vegetables.
Yeah.
Let's just go with it. And we can kind of put it in writing now. Fish and
See, I have this theory too, like when all the peasants and stuff and all this subsistent farming, and they would depend on the lords and everything. That's when all the teeth fell out of your head. When you're eating nothing but vegetables, all the teeth fall out of your head. The skeletal structures, they're all weak. They die of young age. Disease comes in and wipes them all out.
Yeah,
and
they didn't have real food in their diet. So to any kids that are listening, if you want to get away, or men like me who don't like vegetables, just go to Iceland and you don't have to worry about it.
No.
You know, mostly meat and
So you might be able to grow a tomato in your greenhouse, maybe get one or two off.
That's right.
Yeah.
We'll do jalapeno peppers or something in our window, and that'll be our vegetable that
there
we need.
You go.
So
yeah, that's nice. That's nice.
Make it last a year.
Well, so young kids listening, there's probably a lot of them just surrendered to Iceland to be missionaries and won't have to eat vegetables anymore.
That's it.
That'd be a blessing.
Don't think about it too deeply, but
so the population there is like 250,000 people.
A little over that, about 350,000.
Okay, so that'd be like the size of Syracuse, New York.
Yeah,
but it's far less violent than Syracuse.
Far less violent than most places. Yeah, very little violence, violent crime, and less than a murder a year is kind of the number that I've heard. I mean, one bad year skews the number on that when it's that low, but it's very little violent crime, and they're very peace-loving people. They've never been in a war, and they don't have a standing army. Most of their police force do not have guns. And take that for what it is, but they see very little crime in the country. It's a very interesting anthropological study from a society and a culture.
Yeah. Now, you were asked a very good question this morning by a lady. She said, now being such a secular, godless society, how come they're so peaceful?
Yeah. That is a question I've asked myself a lot. Now, I will say this.
Like, how can you have a peaceful, seemingly wonderful society, utopian society almost?
Well, you see it a lot in Scandinavian countries. The overall among
so you're talking like
Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark.
Yeah.
You kind of have,
and they have a socialistic government, but the people are still hardworking.
And I think it's historically kind of this mindset. They're less, the Vikings that you might stereotypically think about as far as warriors is long gone, and that's we're hundreds and hundreds of years from that being the case. And so they're very socially connected, and they're very close knit societies. But
that's what would be my guess, is they have some strong idea together. So their brains are just knit together. Right. And they're in sync with one another. And that's where America's such a mess, because we are not united in thought.
And it's, we're free.
And so if you remember, there's a great book by Sebastian Junger called Tribes, and he talks about how that anytime that Native Americans would capture a colonist, and for long enough, many of them would never go back to the colonies. They would never go back to the Puritan establishment, and he speculates it's because the close-knit tribe and how close they are to each other. And he talks about how that anytime there's an existential threat from without, it knits society together, and the society is far more peaceful. For instance, after 9/11, suicide rates dropped astronomically in New York City. Wow. People weren't getting robbed. Depression was at an all-time low because the city came together. They had an existential threat, this terrorism, and this is our city. We're going to take care of our own. And, we're all brothers and sisters here.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And historically, you can look at Iceland, and that's been it. It's been one thing after another. Yeah. I know in the 1800s, they had a volcanic eruption, and that's kind of been through their history, volcanic eruptions. Why do you have to kill someone? Just wait for a volcano to get them. But they had a huge volcanic eruption, and I think the after effects, over 1/3 of the population died. And so you're dealing with, there was a huge push for repopulating the island, but you're dealing with that.
People died.
Sickness in the 17 or 1800s.
Yeah.
And that's been something they've struggled with. And you're surviving the cold and all of those things. And that is. Yeah,
they got a strong idea. They came from the same backgrounds, been through the same thing as a people group. Yeah. And let's face it, they look the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
They speak the same language. And so they
are culturally pure.
Yeah.
America's a melting pot. Iceland does not have any of that. And for 1,000 years, they were very isolated as an island in the North Atlantic. And they kind of...
And they're pretty amazing people genetically, because I love CrossFit, and typically there's a bunch of athletes from Iceland. I mean, it's like an undue representation. So you have a nation the size of Syracuse sending like all these athletes to the professionals.
Yeah.
And then you have Iceland has been known for its strongmen. You got Thor Gudmundsson, who has like the world record deadlift, and just looked like a monster. Looks like a Nephilim, man.
Yeah,
he looks like a big
I don't know what they look
monster.
like, but I would guess like that. So.
So genetically, they're pretty amazing people.
They are big, tall, strong people, very healthy people, generally speaking.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be strong to hold Thor's hammer, right?
Yeah, that's right. How else are you going to do it? Yeah.
So that's funny. So what's your plans once you get to this place?
Well, we got a lot of plans, I think, on specifically, we want to kind of learn the language and get settled in and learn the culture. But long term, we want to see a church established, a church that's Icelandic, and that's the purpose of missions. You can kind of look at all the different avenues of missions, but the final goal and really the way that Christ ordained it was to see churches established in these communities all over the world, and churches that are culturally like the culture that they're in.
Right.
And that's kind of what we want to do, is go over there, and that takes learning the culture and learning the language.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we would see as being our task. And it's not, this is not step one, step two,
you're
step
headed
three
to
type of thing.
So you're headed to a very secular culture. You're saying this morning too that there is a state church, and it is like a kind of like a Lutheran type of a church.
Absolutely.
How does it relate to Lutheranism, like in Germany?
So historic Lutherans, as far as I'm aware, have nothing to do with this state church in Iceland. I know a lot of the denomination heads here in America, and there's multiple Lutheran denominations here in the States. They, for the most part, have nothing to do with this church in Iceland. They don't like linking themselves with them, because they're not necessarily a religious body as much as a social body.
Yeah.
And they would say that themselves. This is not
it's kind of like
an outsider saying this.
Very, very weak. Like they don't have a theology type thing.
Right. It's more of pushing social agenda. And there's all sorts of quotes out there talking about the battle between.
So you would never find someone in that church that was or a pastor or whatever, a priest or whatever that was actually saved, you think? Like that was regenerate.
I wouldn't want to generally say anything like that, but I would be very surprised.
Yeah, you'd be. It'd be kind of like every once in a great while you'll
come
across a Roman Catholic that says, "No, I'm born again. I believe in Jesus only."
And it's possible, but
I mean,
it's not like they're preaching the gospel in their churches. Yeah. They do have a Bible translation, as it's not the best, but they do have a Bible translation. So there is a way for them to find the truth. But they're not hearing preaching. They're not hearing the gospel being presented. That's not really the role of the church. Mm-hmm. So I would be very surprised if you see that.
And so it's a very, very tight-knit culture, and you would be an outsider coming in.
I will be.
And it's highly, highly secular, one of the most secular nations on earth. And so you just know that it's going to be just patience and faithfulness.
Yeah, this is not a short task, a quick.
Because you're going to have to integrate into that culture. Yeah, have to learn the
language. We'll never be accepted. I don't ever think we're going to be accepted as Icelanders, even if down the road we get citizenship. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be this disconnect.
Yeah, it's not America.
Icelanders, right, and you won't integrate 100%. But we do want to remove the barriers, whether they're American or whatever they might be. These barriers from connecting with them, and the The goal is to reach an Icelander and have that Icelander then reach his country, because that's the most that makes the most sense, and they have the least amount of barriers. They know their people, and they connect with their people. So that's it. But yeah, we do want to become culturally Icelandic as much as we can.
Sure. Yeah, I was talking to a fella just a week or two ago. We're talking about this backwater area where the church is, and I says, people in backwater areas in the States who have a tight-knit community, you come in from the outside, and they might have to watch you for like a decade before they even really think of you as a friend and neighbor.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so I imagine if you're in a really tight-knit country and, people look, act, talk a certain way, and
they're going to be wary of us. And,
a
lot of them speak English, the Icelanders, especially on the South Coast. But when they speak English, that they're speaking English to a tourist.
Right.
And that's kind of how they view these outsiders, as you're a tourist and then you go home. But if you're really wanting to be part of their community, and I've talked to people,
and if you didn't learn their language, that you would never demonstrate to them that you were trying
could
to
communicate
care
with
about
them.
Yeah.
You could communicate with them on a verbal level, but they're not going to connect.
And I speak to their heart through English.
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
Be in their native tongue.
Yeah. And I've talked to people. I talked to a lady from Poland over there. She was not a believer, but she had moved there a few years prior, and she said it was very difficult because she was not accepted and she was ostracized. But she said once she started getting good at the language, she saw the people softening to her.
Well, I would think as a national, it would mean a lot to me if like you came and I saw you, I'm watching you struggle. Like, okay, I'm waiting for you to go back home.
Right.
You stick it out and you struggle through my difficult language and you start getting good at it. I'd say, man, this guy really does care about what he's doing. He's very serious. Oh,
even if I speak Icelandic with an American accent, I'd love to not do that, but that they appreciate that you're trying and you're wanting to learn their culture, and it shows respect.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of times an American can go to a mission field and the sense is that the American has all the answers. And it's less American and more, we have a faith in God, and that's the answer. But you can come across in a certain way. And so when you demean yourself, and Christ took on the form of a servant. He was made in the likeness of man.
And he left his throne to go to a people, and he spoke their language, the common man's language, demonstrated, laid down his life for them. And it's going to be the same thing with a missionary. Yeah.
I'll be a lot less good at it, but that's our example.
Well,
we want
that's right.
We want to try to be like the Icelanders and live like them and learn their language, and that'll be our first step.
And so there's not a lot of guys over there that you know of.
I know of one, and there's two broad evangelicals that I'm aware of in the country. One American missionary, and he's been extremely faithful, very helpful, but there's very little work being done.
Historically, have you found any missionaries to Iceland that did have some sort of a successful work among the Iceland people?
No, I'm not aware of anyone.
How many Baptist churches are there in Iceland?
There's one.
Oh, one, okay.
One. And maybe two, when you define a church, I don't know exactly. I would say maybe two Baptistic churches. But one.
And they would be like a Bible church or something like that.
Yeah.
These Baptistic churches.
Right.
Yeah.
Along the lines, you've got, salvation's pretty squared away.
Yeah.
In those. But, and when we're talking church, we're not talking a church as you would. These are mission works, is how I would more define them. Less of a church as far as an organized, clearly established work. This is something that is more of a mission work, in the process working towards.
Yeah. So you're headed out to a frontier spiritually.
That's our mindset. It's a frontier, kind of a pioneer type of mission work, something that's really never been done. It's not the pioneer work in the sense that they don't know who Jesus is.
Right.
But it's a pioneer work in the sense that there's never been.
So spiritually dark.
Absolutely.
And
there's
again,
no foundation.
You can't point to different even pockets of believers or Christians saying there's some Christians here,
and I'm not
some good churches over here.
I'm not aware of any of that.
This church over in this place is doing it right.
Yeah.
You can't point to all that. Yeah, it's just a spiritually dark place, so it's gonna be a frontier. Take a while, and be patient and
absolutely faithful, and that's what He's called us to be, is just faithful servants. And
so right now you're on deputation.
Yeah.
And Explain for us real quick what Deputation is. Some people get this Christianese, this jargon.
Yeah. So Deputation is simply going around and getting churches to financially partner with us. We cannot work a job in Iceland. They're not big fans of Americans coming over and taking jobs. They'll bring people from the EU, but bottom line is we can't get a job. So in order to live there, we need to have our way paid for from the States. And so we do that through financially partnering with churches who will support us on a monthly basis, or a consistent basis, I should say.
Yeah.
In order for us to get there. So Deputation is traveling. For us, it's been traveling 43 different states and visiting churches, getting meetings with them and presenting what the Lord would have us to do, and praying that the Lord would connect us with churches.
Yeah. And then you have a sending church. How does a sending church work for a missionary?
So our sending church is, as you would see in Acts chapter 13, that they were a big part in us going. The Lord works through local churches is how I see it in the scripture. And so our sending church is kind of our base. We are accountable to our sending church.
That's your spiritual authority.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Our pastor is our spiritual authorities, have been a huge blessing to us and help, is constantly in contact with us and seeing how we're doing, and the church has been a blessing to us.
Amen.
So there's so many little things that a sending church takes, but the bottom line is we are spiritually accountable to them. And if you want to look to see where we stand biblically, doctrinally, you can look at our sending church, and that's kind of the basis for who we are and what we're doing is out of that.
And then do you have a missions board?
We do. We have a board out of Ohio, All Points Baptist Mission. And
how does that mission board work?
So they don't have any requirements as far as now each mission board is different. So you can run the gamut from being an employee of a mission board, and they dictate all the aspects of your work, to, in our case, they mostly just handle the money. Mm-hmm. And a church will send them the money, and they're kind of a clearinghouse getting that money to us.
Does that help you get in country? Doesn't that help you get into
it?
For some
it is kind of a
sponsor.
They see it. The country will see it as a sponsoring agency, and especially if that mission board has more than has a few missionaries, they see that as stability,
right?
And they would understand accountability more through the mission board than they would a local church. It just makes more of a sense in that way. Our mission board is not, they don't require us to do really anything. So most of that requirement on a mission level, and we're talking about
does that help you with like insurance and stuff like that?
Our board does not. And so this is where, they have recommendations like, hey, you might want to look into this, you might want to look into this, but they don't have requirements. But our sending churches has had they've sent missionaries out. And so they kind of understand the concept. And so you want to make sure you're settled on insurance, health insurance, there's life insurance, and then you want to make sure, anything from retirement to do you have funds set aside if you need to get out of the country? There's a lot of those little details
that they help you with.
That they would help us with, yeah, absolutely. And so our board does offer recommendations, but they don't. We are not working through them in that regard.
So that eases the responsibility for your sending church to,
absolutely
to have them oversee that.
We have
kind of like a ministry provided to the local church.
Absolutely. And it is, our board is a local church ministry.
Yeah.
And so it's run by a local church in Ohio. They don't charge anything. And they're huge. All Points has been a huge blessing to us. And one of the things about All Points is they have experience with Arctic countries. They started out as an Arctic mission board, sending the founder, a guy by the name of Gary Forney, who just passed away this last year. Actually, was an amazing man of God. He was an Arctic missionary in way north in Canada for 30 years.
Huh.
And so they have experience with this Arctic mission work. And that's one of the things that they have been able to help us with, is kind of the mindset. Arctic countries are totally different in reaching them, and communally speaking, they're different. And so they've been a big help to us in that regard.
Yeah. And so he's on a deputation. You're raising support through this. You have your sending church. You have your missions like clearinghouse or whatever you want to board,
agency.
missions board. Yeah. And then so when local churches fit in, they'll partner together with you for a certain amount every single month.
Correct.
And then you determine when you get to X number of dollars that your board tells you this is what you need to live and to have a ministry, then you're, because a missionary will say, I'm at 80%, I'm at 90%.
Right.
So as they're going and presenting to different churches are partnering together to support this missionary, you'll end up with about how many supporting churches, do you think?
We kind of see this as being 100 supporting churches.
Mm-hmm.
That's what our goal is, about 100. So
yeah.
it's a big number, and it's a lot of churches, but
yeah. Amen.
So, that's going back to the responsibility on the local church, bringing in, having that communication with 100 churches every month, and a lot of them sending checks. That's a lot of work.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So you would have to almost hire a part-time secretary.
Absolutely.
To take care of just one missionary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there'd be a lot of paperwork, and you want to make sure that all the tax stuff and all that is taken care of. So yeah, that does provide something nice. Yeah. So and then on a church end, a lot of churches are set up like our church. They'll have like a missions fund, and we do here. So people give to it above their tithes and their offerings. At missions conference every fall, people call it Faith Promise Missions Giving. We don't push it real hard here, but it says like if you would like to, with faith in God, give whatever, they put it down on a card, put it in, it's anonymous, they put in an offering plate, and then we say, well, we have this much promise, therefore we can partner together with this many amount of missionaries. So I think we have about 24, 25 missionaries, and then we give them, I think it's 150 now a month on average. Amen. Some of them, for whatever reason, are supported at different levels. Yeah. I think one is 300 a month.
Okay.
And so that's how we work our missions budget. I think last year it was like just a little shy of 50,000. So we're not setting any world records, but it's not too shabby at the same time either. Yeah. And so we have that fund, and it's nice because then we also can give to different projects. So, if you're in Iceland, you're one of our missionaries, and you were, working on a church and needed some money, we say, okay, we got this much in the missions budget, and so let's give them this much money towards his building.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. And it's, for us, we've seen the Lord work, and it's just faithfulness in God's people. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about individuals, and I always want to remind myself that we are living the life that we're living based on the generosity and faithfulness of individuals.
That's right.
And even less so on a church level.
And a lot of it's the widow's mite.
It is.
I mean, you got
absolutely.
You got let's say a widow. She's living on Social Security. She's not making much, but she pinches her penny so she can send money.
Yeah.
To her missionaries.
Yeah. And that's a responsibility.
Yeah.
It is one of, I was not expecting this, and even I grew up in ministry, but it is the most humbling thing in the world to be a missionary. And we are constantly being blessed by people. And even today, I could name just a handful of people who were a huge blessing to us, and going out of their way to do what they can to help us. And that is, it really is a humbling thing. And it's hard for me, I don't see myself as naturally kind of I think it's a pride thing where I don't like to accept the generosity of others. I'm like, well, who do you think I am? I don't need your help. But we literally do. We are dependent on that. Yeah. And the Lord has humbled us and in a good way. And we have been so blessed by people's faithfulness.
How many churches have you been in?
I would say, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I would say 100 and over 100, 110, 115.
So as you get to see all these different church families, like 110 different families, different, DNA, different personalities in each church. Yes. What are some spiritual takeaways from that experience? Because me personally, I think I'm going to miss one Sunday this year, and I'll be down at the Stillwaters Baptist Church down at in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina.
Amen.
And I'll walk in, the pastor will say, "Hey, on vacation, huh?"
Yeah, that's
so
right.
I get to go like one other church besides mine during the year. I do not get this experience that you have. So what are some of your takeaways from seeing all these brethren?
Yeah, and it's amazing. There's a remnant, And, and I hope we don't get discouraged. Even in our country, in America, we kind of see we are socially collapsing, it would seem. But there are a remnant of God's faithful people and churches that we disagree with on all sorts of levels. And I have learned graciousness.
Yeah.
Right. You, as a young man, you're kind of like, this is the way, it's the only way. And,
they're not doing it this way.
I'm standing strong and I won't, I'm breaking fellowship. And the Lord has shown me that there are people who are doing things in different ways that he is using to further his work.
Yeah.
And that has been encouraging. It's been a learning experience for us. And we are so blessed. Every week we go into churches that no one will ever hear about, pastors no one will ever hear about, who are working other jobs and
faithful to the Lord. They've got saints in their church that just love the Lord.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we never would have heard of them. We never would have met them except in the role that we're at now. And it has been 100% encouraging.
Yeah. I can't imagine it not be, because, anytime, for instance, if you go on a missions trip and you cross cultures and everything else, people don't look like you, talk like you, eat the same things you do. But when you start worshiping the Lord or like talking about the Lord, you're dialed into the same God. There's a fellowship.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if you're in Texas or in Maine or in California or wherever, you have that connection.
Yeah.
And we are brothers and sisters in Christ, and we have our Savior. And that's been a connecting experience. When you think of it on a macro level, you're looking at Deputation. We're going to churches, and sometimes we're pulling up to people's houses who we've never met, and we're like, "Hey, we're here to stay with you guys for a week." Like, what's your name? Oh, okay, my name is Nate, and we're going to live in your house, and we have 6 kids. Yeah. And are you making meals for us? Right, and it's deeply personal. People you've never met, and yet you can connect. And sometimes you connect less than others, Sure. But for the most part, it's just like you can talk about the Lord, and you can talk about, well, tell me your testimony. How did you come to Christ?
Yeah.
And, so there's that fellowship, even with people, and you'll spend a week with them, and like in these very hardcore experiences, going to church, the whole week. Sometimes you spend a week with them, and you're rushing out the door, and all, in their home, and then you never see them again. And so it's, 3 days of intensity and then you're gone. But some of the relationships we've built have been amazing, and we'll have them forever. Yeah.
It got to be a great learning experience and encouraging.
Yeah, it really is.
Just to know that there is a remnant out there that really loves the Lord.
Yep. And it's a blessing to know that God's people are everywhere. And,
Hey, so if somebody wanted to book you for a meeting or whatever, how would they look you up?
Yeah, the best way is to look up our website, IcelandicMissions.com. And it's, if you just look for Iceland Missionary, Google that, we're usually the first name that pops up. And sorry about the picture that's on there, but it's, it's my face. I don't know what to do about it. But so that would be the best way, is through our website. And we, email or social media, you can look us up. But that's, we're hopefully getting to the end of Deputation, but we love being in churches. And
all right. And 2023, Iceland, here we come.
That's it. That's
exciting.
Our goal. I'm
excited for you.
Amen.
Well, thanks for being with us today. Thanks for being on the podcast. Everybody listening, make sure you go to pastorjack.org, sign up for the blog. We've got a bunch of exciting podcasts here near future. Next one out, William P. Grady, author of Final Authority, who will be on the podcast. We'll release that sometime week or two. But God bless you. Thank you all for being with us. Thank you so much for watching or listening to the Pastoral Thoughts podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Please reach out to us at pastorthoughtsmail@gmail.com. Also, if you want to check out more about our ministry here, you can visit pastorjack.org. I do have a blog that I do write. I'd love to have you as one of my subscribers there. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for listening. God bless you.